evening to all the audiences today. Thank you so much for supporting me, for all existing subscribers and those who are going to be new subscribers. I'm welcoming you all. So as you all know, I'm the founder of Crazy Geek YouTube channel. My name is Lavanya. And what I do currently is I am an ACCA tutor for P7 Advanced Audit and Assurance paper as well as AA paper F8 Audit and Assurance paper. But a little bit about myself. I've been in this accounting, tax, and audit field for the last three years plus. So that is where I actually ventured into teaching itself after that. So here I actually founded this Crazy Geek YouTube channel. Basically, the main reason is to bridge the gap between what students study in their college or university to what actually they apply at work. And we have this phenomenal interview sessions with all the professionals all around the world. So this time we have a phenomenally interesting speaker all the way from Dubai, Mr. Binod Shankar. So let's not wait. Let's welcome Mr. Binod Shankar to today's session. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting this invitation. I'm very honored, very, very humble to have you in my session.
Thank you, Lavanya. I'm quite excited and quite impressed by the fact that you reached out to me, and also about your specific topic, which is bridging the gap, which is something I'm very passionate about. So I think it's very admirable of you to bring this out for the learning of many youngsters who should benefit from this, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I wanted to ask few questions, but before that, going into the session itself, I don't personally know you, but I knew you from the LinkedIn profile itself. So for those who never knew about you or who are very new to know about Mr. Binod Shankar, so a little bit about yourself, sir. I'm very sure you have huge experience, and we won't have a lot of time if you share everything. So you can pick, the most important things which will be resonating well with the students. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot to talk about, so I got to compress everything, right?
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, I'm originally from India, from South India, Kerala, and I did my schooling in Nigeria and West Africa. Got my BCom, then got my chartered accountancy from India. Worked for an industrial bank in India, and then spent about 7 years with the Big Four, right? Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and Andersen and KPMG in both India and the Middle East on audit and transaction support. And then in 2003, I joined Nakheel, a large government-owned property development company in Dubai. You must have heard of the Palm Islands in Dubai and many other massive property projects. So they were behind it. And I was a manager, got double promoted to director of finance over there. That was a fantastic journey. And then worked as CFO in quite a few companies in the GCC. And then in 2009, I had enough of corporate life. By the time I was executive director of finance for a large listed company in Bahrain. And I said, you know what? I was already doing part-time teaching by the side, CA, CFA, etc., even back home in India and here as well in Dubai. So I quit my corporate life in April 2009 when I turned 40. So interesting age. And with two co-founders who were also CFA chart holders, we started a very small company called Genesis. It was just a cubicle and two of us, and Okay. And fast forward to 2017, the company was acquired by multinational called Kaplan, the guys who make all the Schweizer study materials, and Kaplan is huge. It's a $2 billion global training and publishing giant, right? So they bought it out. And since then, I have been doing many side projects. I have my own podcast called The Real Finance Mentor, which focuses on insight and inspiration for finance careers, something like what you're doing, So we have quite a few common factors, Lavanya. And I've done about 28 episodes so far. I also have a blog, and I blog regularly on LinkedIn as well on career issues, upskilling, employability, and things like that. I appear frequently on CNBC and Bloomberg as a market analyst, where I talk about US markets, European markets, Asia, etc., equity specifically. And I've been on the board of CFA Emirates for 2 years. And I invest as well in markets. So I'm an active stock investor. Apart from all that, I am a mountaineer and a high altitude hiker. And I'm also a long distance and high altitude cyclist. And I've run about half a dozen half marathons and 2 full marathons. I think I should stop it here. Otherwise, the entire interview will just keep on talking about me. Although I like to hear the sound of my own voice, I think I'll just shut up now.
It is phenomenally awesome. So I think the last part is where I'm actually very curious about. You have been doing all of this and you still have time for whatever you are passionate about in terms of sports and everything like that. Thank you so much for your phenomenal introduction. I think I'm just half of your age or less than that. I'm not very sure. So it has been like, oh my God, you have been through the life and you have seen a lot of students and fresh graduates as well as employees who has been having these kind of problems. I think you are one of the best speaker who can actually talk about this topic very, very well. So let's go to today's session. My very first question is, when you were studying in your college or university, is there any gap between what you studied and what you actually started applying in your first 3 years, I would say? First 3 years. And if there is any, and what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, very, very good question, right? Because one of the key issues we have, Lavanya, is the bridge between or the gap rather, between what you learn in college and what you apply at work. And I didn't attend college that much, to be honest. I skipped classes and I had a very mediocre second class BCom degree. I'll be very frank about it, right? Okay. I've been quite public about this as well. Yeah. So I didn't learn as much from college, but I learned a lot in my chartered accountancy course immediately after my BCom. And that helped me a lot when I went into full-time work as an accounts officer with a manufacturing company. So I think doing a qualification helps a lot. College didn't help me that much, but a professional qualification like ACCA, CPA, CA can actually add a lot of benefit to you. But to go back to your question as to what is the gap, I think one gap is, you learn a lot of theory, right? In whether it's degree or even CA or ACCA. But how do you apply this? As an example, for example, you're trying to value a company, and then the valuation formula, right? Cost of equity is the CAPM formula you use, risk-free rate plus beta into equity risk premium, et cetera, et cetera. Now, each of those elements of that formula have to be arrived at sometimes in each separate valuation assignment you do. And it all differs by country, by company. What is the risk-free rate? How do you get it? Where do you get it from? How do you calculate equity risk premium? What do you mean by beta and how do you calculate the beta for that company? Especially if it's a small company, right? We're not talking about Google or Amazon or Facebook or things like that. So I think that's one big gap between theory and practice. Theory is black and white and structured and very deterministic, I find. Practice is very situational, a lot of shades of gray and quite complex. That is one thing. The second thing I think probably bigger than the technical aspect, Lavanya, was on the soft skills side. Now, I was always good at communication, right? Verbal and writing and speaking and things like that. But I think my biggest gap was in people management. And they never teach you that in college, right? Or in school or anywhere, right? And it's not part of any curriculum, which I find shocking. And we'll talk about that later. So when you go out into the real world and you start managing people and teams and managing yourself, you find these huge gaps that you never faced before. Because you're talking about real life problems and people and assignments, and projects. So I think that was my second learning, which was that there was nothing taught in college or CA how to emotional intelligence or things like behavioral competence or things like confidence, things like that, right? So that's a huge gap because you come out of college or you come out of CA, in my case, saying, you're a chartered accountant. Okay, passed in the first attempt. There's nothing else in life remaining, right? Yes. You have made it in life. And I was so foolish and so naive that actually I thought exactly like that at the age of 23 when I passed my CA. Now, looking back, it's been almost 29 years now. I can't imagine how stupid I was. But yes, I wish they taught this in college. But yeah, two gaps. One was, applying technical theory to practical situations, and second, the bigger gap was soft skills.
So, what would be your advice on how to bridge that?
Well, that's a separate session on its own. But, yeah, but let me try and throw out some words of wisdom, right?
Yes,
on the technical skills side, it's easier because there picking up skills is always easier because there is a curriculum, it's structured, there's a process. Whether you want to learn financial modeling or report writing or things like that, it's much easier. We are wired to learn those things from school, right? Go through a material,
Yes.
study it, practice it, right? Write an exam, pass the exam, things like that. So that is much easier, I find. And people normally have no issues picking that up, provided they're open-minded, right? And they get the right job exposure, which is very important. So I think when you join right after uni or doing a CA, make sure you join a company where you have ability to learn things by working with some smart people. That is important. Right? Getting a good boss who knows his stuff and who is willing to teach you the ropes is absolutely critical, which I was fortunate to get in my articleship when I was doing my CA. My boss was a generous guy, senior chartered accountant who took me under his wing and made me do many assignments, audits, due diligence, valuations, and things like that. So I learned a lot. So that is my spiel on technical skills, right? And of course, with time, that also changes, right? Earlier, you need to know Excel. Excel is also, is quite important even now in many areas. But now, sometimes you need to learn coding, right?
Yes.
Or data analysis. So times have changed, of course, over the last 3 decades. So you just need to keep up. And if you keep up, then I find that you can stand out. If you're up to date, right? You can easily stand out in interviews and on the job. So that's very important to do, right? The second part is slightly trickier, the soft skills side, right? I could teach you financial analysis or financial modeling, right? But it's very difficult for me to teach you confidence or communication or networking skills, if you know what I'm saying. Those are because that's linked to your who you are as a person.
Exactly.
And your values and your beliefs from childhood and the exposures you had when you grew up, your school, your college. And so by the time you are at work, when you're 25, 27, you've already had quarter of a century of what I call conditioning, right? And it's not easy to change that mindset. So if you have brought up in a very tough household, conservative family, tough dad, right? Which is very true of Asian families, right? Yeah. Whether you're Indian or Malaysian or Chinese or whatever, right? Then you're probably very good academically, right? But then what I see a lot is social skills are missing. And because they've been brought up to believe that, you're not that great, you have to struggle, you have to work harder,
Exactly.
They don't get appreciated enough at home or in school. You know how schools are, right? And teachers are. So then I find my biggest challenge actually when I teach youngsters or mentor youngsters is getting them to boost their soft skills. Technical skills much easier. So what can we do about it? So what is the solution? Solution to that, Lavanya, is I think just like you get better at technical skills by doing more, one way of getting better at soft skills is by meeting more people, right? Working with more people. Like you reached out to me, right? And you connected. Reach out to people, connect with them, and then gradually you should be able to overcome your shyness and lack of confidence, right? Because you find out that people like to talk to you, they appreciate you, they want to hang out with you, and then slowly your confidence, very gradually, it slowly builds up. You get better at speaking, at writing, at connecting with people. So that's what I would suggest we do on the technical side and on the soft skills side. But it's a long journey, right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your advice on that. I think that is something every individual, I would say, not only just fresh graduate or those in college, even in school itself, when we start, focusing more on the soft skill side, I think we can do phenomenal things.
Mm.
Thank you so much for that. My second question,
Pleasure.
sir. What is the day-to-day scope of an analyst? Since you are into this analysis more, so I thought this would be a good question to know
Sure.
from you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, good question, Lavanya. So let's talk about an equity analyst, right? Equity analyst is somebody who tracks companies and stocks and issues buy, hold, or sell recommendations, right? Based on typically a fundamental valuation process, something that you learn in maybe in ACCA and definitely in CFA program, right?
Mm.
So what you do is you typically analyze companies and value companies. And when you work in a brokerage firm, or when you work in an investment banking firm, or definitely when you work in an asset manager like a mutual fund or a hedge fund or a sovereign wealth fund, you get into these things, analysis of individual companies, individual stocks. So what you do on a day-to-day basis typically is that you basically have to prepare financial models. You then have to talk to company management and suppliers and customers and your own managers and come with a valuation number, right? Um, Prepare a report on the valuation, justifying what mentioning what is the valuation, giving a background of the company, and justifying the valuation, right? You get it reviewed by your bosses. They will maybe give you some review comments or review points, incorporate that, and then you issue it to your clients and to the market, right? That is what you normally do. Now, these things get very hectic when you come to earnings season. Now, earnings season is a quarterly affair when companies typically release their quarterly P&L, right? And then what happens is a lot of the time you have to update your model and update your valuation and update your report. Now that is sometimes can get very hectic because if you're covering a lot of companies, depends on how many companies you're covering. All these companies, for example, banks, right? They'll typically come out with their earnings in the space of a week. So if you're covering 20 companies in a week, you'll have to update 20 models and reissue 20 reports sometimes, right? So that means late nights, early mornings. So it peaks at that time, and then again it's come back to normal. Again, peaks to the next earnings season, right? So that is pretty much what an equity analyst would have to do. I think it's very exciting because you stay on top of industries, on companies. You learn a lot by talking to management, to customers, to suppliers, to other analysts as well. And the fantastic thing is, if you focus on one or two sectors, you actually end up becoming an expert, in the market. In which case, when you speak, sometimes, when you're a senior, you end up actually moving markets. And a lot of senior analysts in the US and other markets, when they come on CNBC or Bloomberg and say something about a particular company or stock, that stock moves either up or down based on what the analyst says. So it's an interesting career. Intellectually, it is challenging and interesting, and you definitely a CFA would help you. An accounting qualification would definitely be a plus because, as I mentioned in my LinkedIn post today, if you have an accounting qualification, you have an edge over other analysts because suddenly you know how the financials work, right? You know the link, between a cash flow and a balance sheet and an income statement, etc., etc. So yeah, that's what an equity analyst normally would do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. So just to add on that question, when you're joining it for the first year, let's say first few months, so do you exactly go towards what you say, or there will be very minor things that you will be starting it off? There's always foundation. Then only over the time you will actually get the experience to speak with the clients. Not immediately it happens. So I think one of the problem that many students have is they kind of lose hope within that 1 year. They seem not learning, and there is one student who actually approached me and she called me and she said, can I talk to you? So it was about tax. So she was telling that this particular company is a very huge company in Malaysia, plantation company. So she was telling that I feel like I don't see a lot of value in whatever I am doing. Is it because I'm in a big firm, a very huge firm? The learning is actually gradually increased because there is a lot of things actually I need to take note of and things like that. So is that something similar for executive analyst too? or there will be some differences?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you raised, Lavanya, because I think what she said is true to some extent. When you join a big firm, you are just one tiny cog, right?
Yes.
in a vast
Exactly.
machine, right? And you feel lost, and you might feel that your efforts don't count too much. I think that's a mistake, because I think the big companies, when you join them, there are pros and cons everywhere, right? Of course. But the big companies have fantastic systems and processes, and they have big clients. And some of the smartest people work in these big companies. We can learn from them, right? So I think the key things when you go to a big company is learn as much as possible. You may not get as much responsibility as you would get in a smaller boutique firm, if you know what I'm saying. But when you work in a big company, you get a lot of scope to learn, because there's so many projects, so many big clients, so many smart managers and smart colleagues out there. And then you can actually pick what you want to work on, right? What sector, what company you might be able to pick, and tell your manager, I don't like real estate or property or plantation. I like banking, for example, or I like insurance, or I like aviation or pharmaceuticals, whatever. And then that gives that range. And then suddenly, you can specialize. And once you like a particular sector, then automatically your passion comes into play and you get better at it, right? Because that fire is there, right? So I think that is there. But there's another problem as well, because you may not always get to do what you like to do, right? This is all of what all of us like. We want to get to do what we like to do immediately, and that doesn't happen all the time. So I think a lot of youngsters, sometimes they lack the patience, and they want instant results, right?
Yes.
And whether it is, you can see that in ACCA exams or CFA or all these tough exams as well, right? People give up too easily.
Exactly.
Right? And I wish they're bright people, right? They're very bright youngsters. I think, you know what? If you fail once, not a problem. Learn from the failure and move on. Similarly, if you don't get an opportunity in a company initially, don't worry. Just work hard, right? Talk to managers, raise your profile, and then they'll probably notice you and say, you know what? I want to work with Lavanya. She seems to have some interesting insights, and she seems very energetic, right? So when you join initially, your experience is zero, right?
Yes.
And your knowledge level is also almost next to zero, apart from what you learn in college.
Correct.
And God knows how much of that you can apply at work.
Yes, exactly.
But what really stands out and what will help you stand out is your enthusiasm and your attitude towards work. So I remember when I was in my early, my first 2-3 jobs, my 20s, right? It was my enthusiasm that stood out. My willingness to learn new things, work late, do difficult stuff, bring out interesting concepts or insights. I was very good at, even now, very good at red flagging issues. You know what red flagging means, right? I was always good at identifying what could go wrong, what are the risks here, because I had the ability then and now to bring together various points, right? And not just see the detail, but see the big picture.
Okay.
So, but anyway, going back to what I said, attitude helps. And patience is part of that attitude. Patience and working hard. And of course, and we'll talk about that as well, getting access to good mentors at work. That makes a huge difference. Yeah.
I think we will go to that part later. Yeah. So thank you, sir, for that answer. I think that would help the student later when they are watching this video. And my third question is, what can a student do now when they are in college or university itself to know how to apply whatever they are learning at the moment?
Yeah, brilliant question, because I wish I had learned more in college. I didn't. I wasted my college years. So, and I see a lot of people doing that even now. I think when you're in college, when you're studying for, whatever, business or accounting or finance, there are quite a few simple things you can do, right? To prepare you for work, to basically help you bridge the gap between work and college. Number one is, you're studying various topics, right? Yes. Economics and accounting and finance and whatever. Try and identify which topic you like, which subject you like. That's probably give you the idea of what career or what passions you have. So, for example, assuming that you like accounting, right? And if you like accounting, then maybe you should look harder at an accounting qualification. If you like finance, then you should start researching CFA. right? Or MBA, for example. So that's one thing, right? As in, try and find your passions in college by looking closely at the subjects that you study. Number one. Number two would be, there's so much information out there, right? Stocks and companies and trading information and articles and blogs. Try and follow a market and a couple of companies in a market. So, for example, if you're in Malaysia, there's a Malaysian stock exchange, there's companies in Malaysia. Pick a sector that you like and follow 2-3 companies there. When I say follow, I mean track what the company does, financial performance, strategy, things like that, right? Earnings releases. And slowly start to understand how the stock market works, how companies work, how they interact with the market, right? Things like that, right? Which is quite invaluable by the time you come out of college. That's number 2, right? So first is basically, identify your favorite topics. Second is identify your favorite sector and companies or company, right? In the stock market, in your region, or even in the US, doesn't matter, right? Whichever you prefer. Third point would be, read a lot. And when I say read a lot, the problem with, in university, you only read university books, right? Because you want to pass the exam.
Yeah.
That is your only priority, right? You want to score high GPA and tell everybody about it. So you don't care a damn about what's happening in real life. You just want to crack the books. I see that. I understand that, right? But the thing is, when you go to work, when you work in a company, they're not asking you about what you studied in college alone. They're asking you, how can you apply that at work?
Yes.
And that application part only comes when you're able to connect the concepts you studied with business reality, right? So, for example, assuming you studied valuation of companies in college, what you should do and then try and see, okay, how are companies valued in real life? How do analysts on Wall Street or Singapore or Malaysia value companies? What techniques do they use, right? How do they come up with their buy, hold, or sell ratings on companies? Right? What is justification, right? Very easy, very, very easy, because a lot of information is free and available out there, right? So that is there. And the fourth point I would say is get a mentor while you're in university, right? And that mentor could be your college lecturer, professor, right? Someone that you look up to, someone who knows a lot about academics, and not just academics, someone who also knows a lot about real life, and someone who can advise you, say, Lavanya, what? I think I've noticed that you're good in, you like finance and you like equity valuation. Maybe you should look at CFA, right? Or for example, I might say, what? I noticed that you're very good in presentation skills and excellent communication skills, and you're very outgoing. Maybe you should look at investment banking as a career, for example. So, someone who can sort of advise you in a very unbiased, independent, expert way, right? Because let's face it, your parents don't know enough about it. Right? They only say, what? I want my kid to be happy and successful and get good marks, and make us proud, and eventually get married and make us even more proud. All those things, right?
Yes.
So they have no idea. Your friends have no clue about you.
Yep.
So the only people who have been actually able to see you in an academic environment and are able to give good advice are your professors. Right? Now, unfortunately, in college, we don't have much of a relationship with professors. Right? We don't, right? And it includes me. We go to class, we bunk class, we make nasty comments about them online, we make fun of them, right? And forgetting all the while that these guys or these ladies, right, they are much more senior than you. They have seen much more of life than you, right? And they can actually guide you about future careers, and they can give you recommendations. For example, when you go to when you want to go to interview, these people might be well connected. So I think it is very mature of you to think that lines, right? And very immature to ignore that relationship and say, no, I will never meet them again. Teachers, right? What do they know about life, right? So that is a bigger. So I think these are the 4 main points I would say that actually help you. It'll help you hit the ground running, Lavanya, when you join a company, as opposed to a lot of others who would not have a clue. You can immediately stand out if you do all this work in college.
That's phenomenal advice, sir, because I think I would be very appreciated if I knew back then when I was in college and university, but it's always a bit later. That's where the awareness kicks in. But yeah, I think through this video session, this interview session, definitely. I think this will reach out to the right students and they will take the actions towards it. Yeah, for my next question, sir, what are your views for our current education system and what are the few measures you are taking for the betterment of education for students itself?
Oh, you opened a Pandora's box, Lavanya.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. Wow. Right. So education system, it depends, right, where you study, to be honest. Did you study in Western countries, US, Canada, Australia? Did you study in India or China or Singapore? It's very different experience, right? Because Western countries have a very different approach to education, right from school. And Asian countries have a very different approach to education. Let me talk about Asian countries, right?
Yes.
Because that's the problem, better context here.
Yeah.
I think the system is flawed in many ways because it is so obsessively focused on academics and studying stuff and passing exams all the way from school to college, post graduation, PhD, whatever, right? So what happens is there's too much of a value given to academics and the other aspects of life, which are absolutely essential to build character, to build a proper personality, and to help you have a fulfilling career and life, are ignored, right? So in education, you don't learn about, within school or college, you don't learn about, like we talked about, soft skills or emotional intelligence or how to deal with people or how to manage people, right? You're not taught about how to look for a job. You're not taught about how to select a career and what are the pros and cons of each career and what qualification you need to get into that career, right? And what are the prospects for a career. You're not taught about things like financial literacy and how to budget your expenses and how to invest in the stock market at a young age and build your wealth. You're not taught about the importance of mental health, which is a big raging issue these days. You can see, especially during COVID, right? A lot of cases of depression and mental health issues. You're not taught about the importance of physical health, of fitness, and how it can help you throughout your life. So I think basically a person emerges from this broken system, right? A very incomplete individual, right? A very incomplete person who is excessively focused on technical academics and has a head full of bookish knowledge, right? And that is very unfortunate. That system hasn't changed for decades and decades. I don't think it'll change for a long while. Right, because it's a very slow-moving bureaucratic machine education system. Right, too many vested interests involved as well, right, which prevent it from changing fast. So that is the problem. The solution to this is that you have to pick up a lot of things on your own, Lavanya. Right, you can't depend on the education system to teach this to you. You have to rely on mentors, your own reading, podcasts, blogs, right? Informal learning outside the system. That's the best way of picking it up, because the education system right now is, I see a lot of bright people coming out of college, and I'm sure you have as well, right? Who have no clue about how to navigate through the complexities of career and life.
Exactly.
Isn't it? And that is not taught, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of them is also me. That's where I actually realized that there's something so not okay with the system, and I had to do a lot of things on my own. I think that's how I grew. Like what you said, I truly believe on mentors. I had a lot of mentors who guided me to who I am now. Who was a very, very timid teenager who doesn't talk to the person next to me, who can actually I was a very timid. I'm an introvert actually. But then if you see now, it's a complete different Lavanya. You'll be like, is this really the
I can't believe that you were an introvert, right? I can't believe that. Right? So imagine.
Yeah. That's me. That was me. But then when the reality hits, when I'm out from college, is where I actually learn a lot of things. I didn't know a lot of things. Like what you said, like I was so stupid at one time. I thought I know everything. Actually, it's nothing. It's actually equals to zero. So learning, making mistakes, actually getting scoldings from your superiors in a very constructive manner, so that you can learn and then you can move forward in your career as well.
Correct.
Thank you so much for that. So my very last question before we end today's session. Share with us your one mistake that you made when you were a student, which the adult you now would want to change at that point of time.
One mistake when I was a student, right? I mean, I made quite a few mistakes. So trying to find which one. I think generally when I was a student and when I was younger, I wish I had been bolder.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? I wish I had been more curious, explored other careers, other qualifications. I wish I'd asked more questions. Let's put it this way,
Okay.
as to why do we have to do this? Why do I have to study this? What else is out there? And Lavanya, the problem is, when you're in a conservative society,
Yep.
and especially if you grew up in a small town, then it's very difficult for you to know what is happening, outside of your circle and outside your town, which is what happened to me, right? I grew up in I didn't say grew up, but in my teenage years was in a town in Kerala called Trivandrum, which is the capital city of Kerala, right? And this is 30 years ago, no internet, no WhatsApp, no YouTube, nothing, right? So where do you get information from? Unfortunately, I wasn't in a major metro like Mumbai or Chennai or Delhi, right? Where you meet a lot of interesting people and, who fly in or attend conferences. I didn't have all the opportunities. So I think my biggest regret is, I can't say regret in the sense of, it's not like, I could do it and I could have done it. No, it's just that I was in the wrong place, the wrong location. Because when you grow up in a big city, you get exposed to many things which you would never ever get in a smaller location, in a town or whatever, right? So I think that was it. So when I look back, I wonder why I was not more curious, why I wasn't bolder, why I didn't consider other qualifications or other careers, why I had to follow the beaten path like everybody else.
Exactly.
Right? And the answer is the society and peers and family, right? And because of that, your mind is very closed, and you don't go out and I also had a very small circle of friends, right? I was an introvert, like you said, right? Although it seems hard to believe now.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I was an introvert, few friends, and those friends were not like of that mindset of learning and exploring and everything. So you fall into the same group, right? And then you fail to move on, you fail to learn. There was a very interesting comment made by the comedian Trevor Noah. You probably heard of Trevor Noah, right?
Yes.
And he was talking about Black kids growing up in South Africa like himself. And he was saying, how can you tell someone to dream when that person doesn't know what to dream about? So, people say dream, okay, but you can only dream about something that you've heard about, right?
Okay.
So as someone growing up in a small town without any, connection or networking with influential or knowledgeable people, he cannot dream about much. You can't dream about going to Harvard or Wharton or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or pursuing a very creative career, in graphic design or marketing or whatever, right? Because that's not what you grew up with. I found that a very powerful statement, you can only dream about what you're familiar with. Right? So when people, and the tragedy there, of course, is that people with potential aim low, or rather lower than they could achieve, because they don't know what they could achieve in life, right? Subsequently in my life, this is my early experience, but I think subsequently in my 20s and 30s, I traveled, of course, I went to the bigger cities, went to Oman, came to Dubai. And then, of course, the experience changed me, right? It opened my eyes to what was possible. I did my CFA about 14 years after I did my CA, right? Which is quite rare, but I love the qualification and the curriculum and everything else. So I think growing up in the right location and having the right network is absolutely critical in your earlier years. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing all your wisdom for all the questions here. So is there any final words of suggestions or recommendations for students and fresh graduates at this moment?
I think there's a lot that probably going through their minds, right, at this stage when you're in college. And that's natural. That's not nothing to worry about there. And the whole journey of exploring and finding yourself takes time, right? I mean, we're not like Steve Jobs, who knew at the age of 19 exactly what he would do for the rest of his life.
I wish I had like that.
Yeah, same here, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we should stress about, oh my God, our peers are doing this, or my mom says this, and I can't. This happens, right? Like you found yourself, right? And you transformed yourself from being an introvert person, and now you qualified your ACCA, your ACCA trainer, and you're interviewing me now, right, on YouTube.
Yes.
Which you probably couldn't have imagined 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But it happened, and that happened because you were. So just keep an open mind. Don't be pressured. Don't get stressed. Don't get depressed. As long as you have an open mind and you're curious, things will happen. Things must happen, right? And you will meet interesting people. You will learn. They will like you. They will help you. They will probably promote you. They will probably hire you. It happens. As long as you're open-minded, you have an engaging personality like you do have, right? I mentioned that to you as well. And that's part of the reason why you have been successful at getting good mentors, many good mentors, because you're open-minded, you're friendly, you're communicative, you're engaging, right? It's not that you have fantastic technical skills, right? And no one cares about that from youngsters. They just want to see someone who is coachable and who is open-minded, right? And I have, like I said, my website, therealfinancementor.com, where a lot of this, like I said, I interview a lot of analysts and CIOs and CFOs. And people can go there and listen to the podcast, and they can read the full transcript of each episode, and a lot of blogs that I write, and also my LinkedIn page, right? Yes. Binod Shankar CFA, where almost daily I write something about my very practical experience, right? Very honest, practical views on careers, specifically on careers and education, and broadly about life as well, right? Because you can't separate life.
Yes, exactly. True.
So yeah, that would be my 2 cents worth of advice.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. So if there is any students or fresh graduates that wants to connect with you, I think the best platform is LinkedIn. Yes. I think LinkedIn is one of the best place. I would also actually share during this session, because I met Mr. Binod Shankar through this beautiful platform. I have met a lot of wonderful people. I grew a lot in the past few months, I would say 6 months. I grew a lot. I met phenomenal people. I had Zoom sessions with them, getting them to share their wisdom. So I think I would also suggest every student to also go into LinkedIn and share about whatever you are going through, whether it's something not positive one. Being real about yourself. I think that's the best way to go about.
Yeah, in fact, I forgot to add that point when you asked me about what you could do, what youngsters could do in college, right?
Yeah.
The 5th point could be get on LinkedIn, right? And invite people that you would like to connect to, network with them, learn a lot of things, right? LinkedIn is not social media in the sense of Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. LinkedIn is your professional networking site, right? And it's very valuable. I mean, you can get hired through LinkedIn. You can get connected to many people through LinkedIn. So I says do that. It's free. It's easily accessible, right?
Yeah.
And the earlier you start on LinkedIn, the more people will know you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir, for today's session. I had a wonderful time with you, and I will meet you very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Lavanya, for inviting me. I think this is a fantastic initiative, especially coming from someone so young. And there's so much promise and so much ambition I can see in your actions, and I really wish you the best in your career. And I wish anyone listening to this video also learns a lot about how to be employable, and how to grow in their career as well, and hopefully the message is spread wide and far.
Yes, thank you so much for all your blessings, sir. See you soon.
Thank you so much.